Hey everyone, Tom here with the Season 2 Epilogue. I'll start with some thoughts about the channel and the game, then start talking about how each character performed when their ending card pops up. First, I want to say again how much I'm in awe of this community. It grew so fast, it's relentlessly positive, and you all are having active conversations not just with me, but with each other in the comments and when we did a live chat for the Season 2 finale premiere. I started this channel as a pandemic hobby last year, thinking maybe I'd get a few curious folks to follow along, and I never would have imagined I'd be bringing together a group like you all, and I'm super grateful for it. A lot has changed for me since starting the channel. I've changed jobs, I've moved across the whole country, among other things, as though that weren't enough for someone right now. But through it all, you all were always there with your encouragement and enthusiasm, so I want to thank you sincerely. I also want to send my appreciation to the developers of Three Houses, whose decision to leave in full customization for every character made this channel possible. I hope something similar happens for Warriors 3 Hopes, since my dream is now to go through that whole game with War Master Linhardt. If I were to pick on one thing I'd want to add in Three Houses, it would be more of an incentive to develop your units beyond just a main squad that you use in every fight. B-Team Buffoonery was one of my favorite sub-segments in Seasons 1 and 2, but the game does very little to incentivize it, and in some sense it actively punishes you, at least on Maddening, for using units beyond those that you deem A-Team worthy. The paralogs forcing you to deploy certain units is something, but I would have loved to have some situations where having a deeper, usable roster gave you some kind of tangible reward, like being able to take on extra missions for rarer ore, or a relic you could only obtain with a secondary squad while your main team is deployed on a story mission, something like that, to give a concrete reason to have more students actually trained and leveled up. With all of that said, let's think about how things went for the Azure Loons here. We see a lot of repeats in the MVP slot, and I think that understates just how much of a roller coaster it was of who was really the star at any given time. We see a lot of Trilith, Felix, and Annette here because they did big damage, but it really wouldn't have been possible to get through a lot of missions without Dedue's dances, without Mercedes blocking everything, without Gilbert coming in at the end to get some clutch hits. Everyone really had their moment to shine, even Sylvain, who had a disappointing ending but had a real peak in the mid-game. Now, we will get through some individual characters. There were a lot of individual endings here, and I won't have a ton to say about all of these characters like Flane here, that didn't get a ton of on-screen time. We only did so many B-Team Buffoonery segments, and only a few people had the honor of getting a repeat when those segments did happen. Hanneman got to be on screen a few times, just because it's kind of funny to see him walking around in his big armor with giant axes. I think he had the Devil Axe equipped for a while, but mostly he was a defensive adjutant. Hilda joined the squad for the first time on the channel, and unfortunately, as you can see from her stats, she didn't get to do a whole lot with it, but I'm sure she appreciated joining the Church of Dusker with Father Dedue at the helm. It's the kind of aesthetic I think she'd appreciate. Bernadetta, I put a little more work into since we hadn't seen a Swordmaster actually deployed during the Crimson Flower run, so we bent the rules a little bit to let her do that, and she literally got a kill in her paralogue, which is the bar I set for everyone, and honestly I'm shocked she cleared it with how underleveled she was at that point. Manuela actually did pretty decently for herself as an armor knight. Last season she tried to be an arcane magic user, didn't go great either time. We'll hear more from Manuela in season 4, I think. Ignatz is one of my favorite characters in the regular version of the game, but we just haven't gotten to a point where he's been able to shine on screen yet, so much that the lights dim when I talk about the prospect. So in Season 3, in a little while, hopefully Ignatz will get his time to rain death from the skies. Anna got a kill. That's the most I can say for her. We might hear more from Anna in Season 4 as the spotlight shifts around, but for now, I'm impressed that she got one. And you should be too, frankly. Alois. Alois also didn't get a ton of screen time, but he can still steal the show just with how he looks. He and Gilbert are eternally fashion icons of this channel. He became Santa Claus during Season 1, and he continues on his journey to bring joy to everyone. Lysithea actually got to make an appearance in some of the final battles as an adjutant, and a shockingly effective addition in her really late game paralogue with Ferdinand, since she dealt actual damage with that bolt axe and had one of the highest offensive stats of anyone in the entire roster. Dorothea didn't quite get to make the impact that she did in Season 1, since she wasn't in the main roster and didn't get a whole lot of B-team time either. But she was one of the very few flyers on the squad, and that's something. Raphael. We were kind of overloaded with mages in this run. Our A-team had a ton of them in Ashe, Ingrid, Trilith, among others, and the B-team had a lot of them as well. There's just a lot of magic weaknesses in the game, and so hopefully Raphael will get more of an opportunity to find a place for himself next season. Ferdinand. The fact that he wasn't on screen very much didn't stop him from being really effective. In his paralogue, which was really late in the game, he did manage to get several kills, was an actual valuable contributor, and his charm kept him relevant with gambits. Shamir. She gets Physic, which makes her a really, really good B-team contributor. She makes things possible in her paralogue with Alois early on in the game, and filled in when we didn't have so many sources of healing yet on the main squad. Leonie was one of the only other flyers on the squad aside from Dorothea, and honestly wasn't that great. She didn't have a lot of leveling time to get that magic stat up, so hopefully she will get that opportunity in a little while on this channel. Marianne did have a chance to shine, despite not being in the house that was spotlighted for the season. She had an extremely effective paralogue to get Blutgang for her appointed knight, Armorcetus, and she continued to be pretty good, possible 12th slot contender that just unfortunately got filled by Seteth for the sake of hilarity. Catherine didn't have a lot of time to develop her as a character. Season 4 will be more of the place for that. She just got piled in with people that were developing magic, and there were just a lot of those in the B-team slots. Lawrence unfortunately had to go through the experience of being forced to wear a shirt again after his iconic status of deflecting every attack ever with his iron abs, and we're all working through that. Yuri, still pretty good in the early game. Got on his horse, attacked pretty well, had a high base strength. It helps that his weaknesses didn't detract from where his base stats take him. And he has decent growth, so he just ended up being okay, which oddly meant he got less screen time, since it would seem more boring to use him. Caspar managed to perform pretty well. He used both a bow and some magic, so it was interesting to see him in a new role, but he didn't get a ton of B-team time, despite his control over the concept of time. Constance. Her main draw is that her armor looks fabulous. Not quite the status that Gilbert got in this season, but I think we're all looking forward to when she gets a spot in the A-team like the other Ashen Wolves have. Cyril managed at the very end of the game to get to Mortal Savant status and trained with Ashe, and those antics were honestly pretty good. His personal is quite good for a challenge like this, since it means he can get the offensive stat that he actually needs in the class that is forced upon him. Balthus. Like Yuri, he was pretty good. His base stats align pretty well with the path that he gets set on, and so he did very well when he was part of the B team. He put out a lot of damage, and he will be a good part of the Golden Deer squad, I imagine. Gilbert. It took him a while to get going, and he only debuted in the second half of the game, but when he got to Trickster, I think he inspired us all to be better people, and to know that no matter where we are in life, we can still have dramatic transformations. Happy. Happy was a really good healer throughout the game. She got her War Cleric on in the latter portion of the game, and Numagale is a very good attack once you've developed Brawling and Magic. So what can I say? She really did engage Beast Mode. Now we have Ingrid here. She was a powerhouse throughout the game. She wasn't MVP very much, but her control of the weather meant that we could take on all kinds of challenges. She had enough range that she could take things out. It was almost like we were using warp strats on some maps because her range was just so long she could take out key units. Sedith joined the A-team at the very end, confused about what his future would be in a world where Trilith was absconding the leadership role and Dedue was the biggest religious figure. Ashe. Ashe was a really low-key hero of the run. His speed was so high, he took after Season 1 Petra and how much damage he could put out consistently, and he even got to S rank in Reason, so that he also had super high range, and he still could deal damage with those swords. Just all around great unit Ashe was, following in the footsteps of Petra. Annette looked a lot more like Season 1 Ferdinand, in that she was constantly getting 69 crits, just her strength was at that point. And her strength was actually higher than Sylvain's in some other typical strength-forward units, so that was a bit of a surprise. Linhardt was a 12th slot consideration because he was just so good with that bolt axe, and who can say no to Linhardt with an axe or Linhardt with some gauntlets? Sir Felix and Assas Sylvain. Sir Felix was consistently quite effective, got MVP a lot because when he did get critical hits, it would often be in the triple digits. Assas Sylvain, he did have a brief moment in time where he was one of the best units on the squad when he got that Levin sword initially, but his stat growth just dropped off so precipitously that he ended up making it very difficult for himself to deal damage toward the end. Dimitri and Dedue. Dimitri didn't get MVP that much, but he was consistently extremely good. His magic wasn't that fast all the time, but was always really good for dealing damage. And of course, Dedue was there to dance up anyone that needed dedicated service and needed to get some extra speed or just to attack again. We all know how good dancers are, and dancers are even better. Trilith. Always one to take glory, never one to take responsibility. Trilith was always there to get the kills. And of course, we have Thunder Cetus, Armor Cetus, whatever you want to call her, the collector of all the relics, used them better than anyone could possibly have imagined. And that is it for the Azure Loons. I had a ton of fun with them. I hope you did too. Thank you all for watching. I'll be taking a little break for a few weeks before starting Season 3 with Verdant Wind. I know you Golden Deer fans have been plenty patient up to now, and I'll be excited to go on that journey with you at that point. See you all then.